Hello, and welcome once again to Love, Life and Faith with me, Dr. Abigail. I'm glad to be coming your way again today, and I've got an interesting topic I'd like to talk about, and it's regarding the uncertain times we're living today. It's not surprising the happenings and the news around us, how it's enough to bring fear to anyone's heart, won't you agree? So I've decided to speak on the subject fear. How fear, if not dealt with, can seriously cripple. I call it the unseen prison. And above all, how you can successfully deal with fear. Fear is the most common emotion in the lives of human beings. Did you know, at the time of birth, two basic fears are already present. One is a fear of loud noises, and the other is a fear of falling. Even a very small child has those fears built into their makeup already. And then as we grow older, people begin to collect many additional fears. Fear, you see, occurs in the mind. It is a response which seeks to avoid threatening danger. Being fearless does not mean the absence of fear. It just means our fears are kept in check by our ability to regulate our thoughts and by adjusting our situations or our perspective on them. So sometimes you find that fear actually helps us by motivating us to act because we understand what's at stake. It is what causes you, for instance, to do those things you really don't want to do, like paying your bills. Fear might make you go to work because you know what's at stake if you don't. Fear might make you wear that seatbelt when driving. So some fear is not always a bad thing. However, when we are unable to keep our fears in check, and when we don't or cannot regulate our thoughts and our perspective on the fear, then our fears can become overwhelming and problematic. Fear and anxiety, when they start to run our lives, they create significant problems in your relationships, in your health, and in your life as a whole. So you see things like worry, anger, anxiety, criticism are all symptoms of fear. So fear may be a one-off feeling, but it can also be a daily, long-lasting problem. Some people feel a constant sense of fear and anxiety all the time without any particular trigger. They look around and you just can't figure out what exactly you're frightened of. Have you ever been in that position? What some people are afraid of can vary from the mundane to the very serious. So for instance, one could be afraid of creepy crawlies. You could be afraid of the opinion of other people, fear of maybe being attacked by a criminal, fear of not having enough money, fear of public speaking, of flying, fear of losing your job, fear of failure or rejection, even fear of disease or pain. It varies so much from individual to individual, and even the fear of death, which is the ultimate fear of many people. Sometimes fear has a way of creeping into your thinking patterns subconsciously. In some ways, this is even worse because we don't recognize that fear is present and therefore it continues to fester and escape our attention to deal with it. For example, what do I mean? Have you ever stayed in a bad relationship because you were afraid of being alone or afraid that you'd never find anyone else? That is an example of fear being in the subconscious. Also, have you ever continued at your work? It's a dead-end job, you know it, but because you fear the process of finding a new one. Sometimes fear is even more subtle. Do you, for instance, make sure your lawn is mowed every weekend? Is it because you love the way it looks or because you're afraid of what your neighbors might think if you let it grow a little? Do you buy designer accessories? Is it because you truly love the style or is it because you're afraid of what people will think of you without them? The truth is, when you open the door to fear, you open the door to be oppressed. It takes away the power to control your own destiny and future. So you see, fear enslaves people into a life less enjoyable than it should be. There was a man in the Bible, Job, a great man of the ancient East, as the Bible described it. And he says, "For the thing I greatly feared has come upon me." You see, human beings were not created to experience fear. So how did fear enter the world? Well, fear with sin entered the world when Adam and Eve disobeyed God. That was the beginning of this destructive force of fear, which continues to be passed down from generation to generation. And that is why every human has fear, but we deal with it in different ways. So what are some of the things that fear can do? Fear destroys confidence. Fear makes you think you will lose it all. Fear makes you panic. In fact, fear will make you hide your talent, thinking no one will accept you. Fear can really hold one back from what's possible, that brighter future that is possible. Fear can hold you back, because with fear comes bondage. It oppresses and it brings terror. Oh, imagine how many people are terrorized mentally and physically by their fears. So fear saps spiritual vitality and it can paralyze the soul. And once that happens, that person has become a slave to fear. So you see, fear gives access to all sorts of evil if not dealt with. If you look closely and reflect on your life, what are the things you have not been able to achieve? Or which areas of defeat can you identify? You'll probably be able to trace it to an underlying fear or unbelief. Let me share this scripture with you in Proverbs 29:25. It says, "The fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe." The fear of man brings a snare. Another way to say this is a person's fear sets a trap for him. It's like being held in prison. One of the worst things about fear is that once fear gets hold of a person, it creates a vicious cycle. The more scared you feel, the scarier things seem. This is a process called potentiation. Your fear response is amplified if you're already in a state of fear. So, if you're afraid of flying, even the slightest turbulence will push your blood pressure through the roof of the plane. And the more worried you are about your job security, for instance, the more you will sweat it when your boss calls you in for an uneventful meeting. So fear creates more fear. I'm amazed by how much gastrointestinal problems, such as ulcers and irritable bowel syndrome, even things like headaches, heart problems, are caused by an underlying fear and anxiety. So fear is a tool of the enemy to stifle our confidence and to distract us away from the good plans God already has for us. Christians, even Christians who struggle with fear, often have this sense of unworthiness and anxiety that God is upset with them or angry with them, or a false belief that they can never make up for and correct their past failures. That is what fear can do. So, next I'll be talking about how you can effectively deal with your fears. But you'll have to join me next week for this. So make sure not to miss the next episode of Love, Life and Faith, because life is a gift from God. Live every day without fear and love every moment of it. See you next week.